So Keyshaun, obviously game week is getting closer and closer. How are you feeling? How are the guys feeling right now with this part of camp?
Yeah, I feel good. I feel like as a defense, we're taking those steps every single day, getting on the same page, communicating better, holding each other accountable. There's obviously a lot more we got to do in terms of game planning, but I like where we're at and what we're doing as a defense. And on the offensive side of the ball, they're moving the ball down the field. You see that, and I think they're gonna have a hell of a unit this side too.
Being a real leader in this team last year and being a guy who's going to have that similar role this upcoming season, what was the biggest thing for you in terms of improving and progressing in your game between last year and this year?
I think from year one, I've said this multiple times, like our system and what we do as a defense is a hard system. And, there was times out there I wasn't fully confident, or I was kind of hesitant on some things, so not playing to the best of my ability. But this year, I feel confident. And I know this defense from, the ins and outs of it, so, I'm ready to go. I'm confident as can be.
On that note, Brian Ward obviously talked a lot in the spring about this year being a year where you guys are going to do a lot of the same things, but obviously find different ways to execute them and switch things up on opposing teams.
Yeah.
So for you being a leader in that regard, how exciting has that been for you to, go through that process of learning more and kind of getting even deeper into the playbook and finding different things out that you can exploit?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what you have to do as a defense, and especially if it's a defense like ours. We have 11 returning or 10 returning starters, whatever it was. You can do stuff like that. You can make a whole different bunch of pictures, and play this single defense. But we're all showing, cover one, cover two, or whatever we're doing. So I think, at this point, just having fun with it. We all got to do our jobs and trust what our coaches are teaching us.
For you individually, obviously you had a great year last year on the stat sheet, putting up big numbers, making tackles, and that kind of stuff. Are there any goals you have individually for yourself that you want to accomplish this year and get out of it? Not even stats-wise, just like overall in your performance.
I think I played good, but there was games back where I look and I kind of look back at my preparation or what I was doing, and I didn't like what I put on film. So I think those games, there's some moments I got to fill in, things I got to work on, and that's why us and the coaches, we watch that film and we figure out what we needed to do. And this all off season, that's been a huge emphasis for us. But I'm never the one to stat chase. I'm gonna do my job. When the plays come, I'm gonna be there to make them. But obviously my number one goal is to help this team win games.
What do those improvements look like for you? The things you kind of saw last year that you didn't really like too much, and now you're like, okay, I got to fix this going forward.
I think number one, playing in space. My eyes were a little all over the place at points, and my angles, on the ball carrier kind of were tweaked off a little bit. But this year, if you've been watching fall camp, that's something I've been emphasizing myself is my ball out breaks and things like that, my footwork. And, I'm looking at film from my footwork from last spring to this spring to now fall camp. It's like a completely different guy out there. Look completely different. So
one of your running mates, Jordan Crook, obviously got promoted up to leadership council this offseason. What do you make of his development progression and how he's been as a player and the leader for this team in the fall?
Yeah, for the jump, whatever as we all came in on the same time, I kind of knew Crook was one of those guys that, you sit back and people are going to listen to him. He's got a loud voice. He loves to talk. He's going to be the voice of the team one day. And, I think, he's a great guy and everybody on this team likes him.
What do you think is the biggest thing you've seen in progressions from guys like Martell Hughes or like Isaiah this year over the course of kind of going from one year to the next and improving over time?
I would say when you come to the linebacker position, probably about 70% of it's mental. Once you understand what you're doing, you can really pay attention to now, I can work on my footwork. I'm going to emphasize my footwork this week, and next week I'm going to work on my pass drops, or I'm going to work on my man coverage. All those, both of them, and what they've, especially Martell and Isaiah. Isaiah's gotten tremendously better from even day one of fall camp. He looks like a completely different linebacker, and Martell as well. You saw him out there last year playing as a third down linebacker, as a true freshman, so that's huge to him.
So for you going forward with having the partnership with AJ Cooper as your position coach, obviously last year you guys established that relationship and now you've built off of it.
Yeah.
What's that partnership between you and him look like, and how has he made you better over the course of your time here at ASU?
Yeah, he's one of those coaches that I look up to. He's done this. He's been through the whole process. I trust what he says and what he's doing for us. And, we have a process as a group, and we're going to do it every day. And, he establishes that, and it's our job to trust him and do it. So, he does a lot for us, and kudos to him. But, like I said about my film, from my last spring I was here to this spring, it's all him, him helping me out with my footwork and giving me tips and stuff, doing all these different things. So, yeah.
So for you going forward now with the couple weeks before the first game of the season, obviously a huge time for preparation, what's the biggest thing you want to see from the linebacker room and the team between now and the start of game week 1?
I think game 1, is sometimes it can be pretty sloppy, so I'd like us to come out with a clean game 1, communication high, MA is very low. and just playing as a confident defense that we know we can play and, come out fast from the jump.
Tomorrow's obviously a scrimmage day for you guys, and Dillingham mentioned the other day about it needing to be a game where time where these guys like kind of really feel amped and ready to go. Like it's almost that time of the year. Do you feel like a lot of that responsibility to make sure that not guys are playing hard, but that you're a leader and a voice, being like, hey guys, this really does matter tomorrow because we're getting closer and closer to that time of the year?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, my role, not set the tone with my voice, but how I play. If I'm going to do something and if the coach is expected to be that way, I'm going to do it. And, I'm going to be an example for this team. If we're full go 100% alive, I'm going to play full go 100%. So, that's kind of just my role on this team. Obviously, the leadership as well, but, I'm going to set the tone by how I play football.
How fun has it been to go up against this offense every day in practice and kind of see them evolve as well as you guys evolve every day?
Good. They got guys all over the place, from the O-line to the receiver group, the running backs, and obviously the quarterbacks. So, they give us great looks, do a whole bunch of different things, and, sometimes it's tough, but, at the end of the day, it's making us better as a defense.
Obviously, Sam has been a guy who's progressed in his game over the last year and has gotten a lot of maybe layers added to his game over time. Do you feel like as a linebacker where you're all responsible for seeing a lot of what the offense is doing, that you're noticing like new things he's maybe been doing compared to like a couple weeks ago or last season or whatever?
Yeah, my first spring I was here, we left and we were meeting as a leadership council about it, and we were talking about the quarterbacks, and it was still a competition. So we really didn't know who was going to be the quarterback after that first spring bowl. And then that fall camp, and Sam, he flipped a switch. He came out from practice one, was completely different guy. He's completing passes, not giving the defense the ball, taking care of the ball. Everything you want to see as a starting quarterback, he was doing that. And now this offseason, going against them all year, and everything that him and JT and Turbo and into the running backs, everything that they've worked on is tremendous, and their growth as an offense is really good.
All right, thank you.